our U.S. counterparts here, the U.S. groups that are concerned not just about what this means for U.S. consumers, but how Prince Edward Island is a part of this global plan for genetically modified salmon eggs. So I'll ask Eric to make some remarks.
Thanks, Lucy. We learned just a couple weeks ago that the U.S. federal government is close to approving this genetically engineered salmon. It was leaked that they had finished their environmental assessment. As far as we know, the assessment is going to be completely inadequate and based on AquaBounty's own data. The parts of the assessment we've seen so far assume that the fish eggs are going to be completely sterile, and so they pose no risk to the environment and wild salmon populations. But even according to the FDA's own data, up to only 95% of the fish eggs will actually be sterile at a commercial scale. Meaning when AquaBounty scales up to sell these eggs around the world, up to 5% of those eggs could be fertile, they could be raised, and they could escape into local waterways. And we also know that AquaBounty right here in the facility behind us has fertile males and females in order to produce their eggs. If they were to escape into the water, which is just a couple paces away, it could be the beginning of the end of Atlantic salmon populations. We think that the U.S. government and the Canadian government need to conduct proper, full, and independent environmental reviews to ensure that not only the local salmon populations, but global salmon populations are not threatened by this application.
Hi, I'm Jaydee Hanson with the Center for Food Safety. And when we planned this trip, we hoped we were going to be able to actually go to the AquaBounty facility. I've visited biotechnology companies in the U.S. in their research facilities, and they've welcomed us being there to look at what they're doing. They want to show off what they're doing. And here we have a company, a U.S. company in Canada, that doesn't want to show off what it's doing. It claims that it's been researching this fish for 20 years and it's the most researched, but won't show us how they're doing it and even what the fish look like. We see the same picture of one fish over and over again in their photos. We'd like to see more. We'd like to see how they've got this set up. We want to see whether the fish are thriving or not. Good. Open for questions now? Yep, sure.
So tell us about the process in the U.S. How far is it advanced right now?
Well, the U.S. is approving this drug. I say this drug. They're approving this fish as though it were a drug. They're not using novel food law because we don't have one. So they're saying the only thing they're really approving is whether this genetically engineered hormone gene is gone into the fish right. And they have to, by law, do an environmental assessment, but this is the Food and Drug Administration doing an environmental assessment. It's not the Environmental Protection Agency. So we have an agency that has proven in other cases that they don't know how to do environmental assessments, doing an assessment.
So you think it's biased?
No, I think the agency is likely to approve it based on faulty data and incomplete environmental assessment. So if you put bad data into the system, you're going to get bad systems data out. So you know the data on whether these fish are more allergic or not, they looked at 6 fish. This isn't even good enough to get you a win at the science fair. But they want to approve a fish based on such poor data.
So what's the concern about these fish? If they do give the approval, what's the concern?
Well, there's two approvals. I'll defer to Eric at Friends of the Earth for the environmental stuff. But on the food safety, what we know from the little bits of data the company has given FDA and that the FDA has released is you have a fish that is more contorted than the average farm fish even. That its jaws are more eroded, that its gills are more messed up, that its spine is more messed up. What that says from a food safety point of view is this is a fish that's likely to be sicker and might need more antibiotics. They didn't give us any of that data. antibiotics are required to raise this fish. So at a time that people are worried about growth hormones in their food, you have a fish that always has growth hormones turned on. You have a fish that might be sicker than average. You don't know whether it's going to require more antibiotics. And the thing that people eat salmon for, the omega-3s, it's got less than any other fish we've looked at. So it is not something that everybody should want on their table, at least with this scant bit of data.
But we've heard, well, that's a food safety issues, but we've heard that it might be the end of the Atlantic salmon. Why?
Well, let's Eric pick up on that.
Thanks, Jaydee. The main concern would be around escaped genetically engineered salmon, whether they escape here, right in the bay behind us, or in the facility in Panama, or in any other facility that AquaBounty plans to raise these fish. Studies from the Canadian Department of Fisheries has found that genetically engineered salmon can be more aggressive when food is short, and in some cases they've even resorted to cannibalism, and that increased aggression in their behavior has led to collapses in the salmon population in this study. So we're concerned for the fate of wild salmon populations if the fish were to escape. We see that we're right here a couple steps away from the water. AquaBounty claims publicly all the time that they want to raise these fish around the world. And once the fish are approved, there's no way to guarantee they'll only be raised in inland tanks. A lot of salmon farming happens in open water nets, and escapes happen there all the time. Millions of fish escape every year. So once the FDA in the US approves these fish, or if the Canadian government approves them, then we're going to be opening the door to GE fish possibly being raised all around the world with very little oversight, without proper containment systems. If AquaBounty's containment systems are so strong, then let us in and let us see it. Right now they're keeping us out.
So, what are you doing here? I mean, you've said all your issues, your preoccupations. So, what do you want to do by being here in PEI?
Well, I think two things. One, we want Canadian people to know that not everyone in the U.S. Thinks this is a good idea. In fact, 65% of U.S. people in a poll done by Thomson Reuters, which is a major polling outfit, say that they would not eat this fish. That's higher than any other kind of genetically modified food. So, you know, what I would be worried about if I were a Canadian salmon farmer is that people would be thinking all Canadian fish are GM fish. And, you know, people in the United States don't want to eat GM fish. They want to eat healthy fish, but not GM fish.
Let me ask the same question. Lucy, why are you here today?
Well, we think it's really important to talk to people who live in Prince Edward Island about this issue, because AquaBounty, this US company, has stationed themselves here and are being hosted by the province, but actually the provincial government would have no say, it would appear, in any final decision. There's no consultation with PEI residents or with the government before our federal government, Environment Canada, would approve the production of the genetically modified salmon eggs. So we're really happy to hear what Prince Edward Island residents have to say about this issue and ask them to take action and to share our information and perspectives. And it's really important that we're here with our friends from the United States, because this US company, AquaBounty, has decided to split their environmental review between Canada, Panama, and the United States. And we want to see a full environmental assessment and not this haphazard idea that we could just approve genetically modified salmon egg production here on Prince Edward Island and not worry about the global consequences.
What do you need to stop this salmon from coming to market?
We need, firstly, Environment Canada to commit to a really strong environmental assessment process, one that includes a consultation with the provincial governments, one that includes public consultations, but we need full confidence in Environment Canada that actually they would consult with the governments of Panama and the United States and engage in a full assessment of the global impact of genetically modified fish.
A year ago there was a press conference here, and the idea was to drum up public support. Are you getting that support?
The public is very alarmed about genetically modified fish, and we see that the public are very supportive of consultations, of public input. People want to have a voice about the future of food and certainly about the future of fisheries. And that's what's at stake here, is the future of our global wild fisheries. It's really important, and we see that people want to be able to control the direction of our food and farming.
So where are the concerned people? I see 5 people here.
Oh, well, we're here for a press conference. Hopefully tonight we'll see people come out to the Rod Charlatan Hotel for the event on genetically modified fish. We're hoping that people from across the communities here in Prince Edward Island will come to the event tonight. We hope to talk with fish harvesters, people who know the local environment, and people who know what Prince Edward Island's reputation is internationally and value the place that Prince Edward Island has in our history of the fisheries, so that we can protect together the global fisheries.
What do you want islanders to do? You've said that, well, you said that the governments don't really seem to listen to the people. So what do you want the islanders and everyone to do?
I think it would be really powerful if residents of Prince Edward Island spoke with their government, with the provincial government, about this issue. I think the provincial government needs to take action, needs to be very engaged, proactive on this issue of genetically modified salmon.
So you want pressure on the governments?
If the people have strong feelings about genetically modified fish on Prince Edward Island, they need to pressure the provincial government so that the provincial government can make that known really clearly to Environment Canada.
The company is saying that there's misinformation going around, that their facility in Panama is a research facility, only has nothing to do with commercial production.
Sorry, could you restate that?
Yeah, the company says that their facility in Panama is only collecting scientific data for approval purposes. It has no role in the future commercial production of their fish.
It may be that there's 2 different facilities in Panama. The U.S. company is very clear that they plan on producing the GM fish in a facility in Panama. That much is very clear, there's no dispute. So the question is, what exactly is that facility? Where is it? It's described in documents sent to the United States government. So I don't know what that is, but the company's been very clear that they have a facility in Panama. It may be a research facility that's quite separate from where they want to grow out the fish, but the company plans very clearly to grow the fish in Panama. That's what they've asked approval from the U.S. government for, is this idea that Prince Edward Island would grow the genetically modified salmon eggs. The company would send the salmon eggs to Panama for grow out and processing, and send the processed fish to U.S. consumers. And of course that plan could also change and expand throughout the world as quickly as AquaBounty would like. You're saying that AquaBounty says that's not the case?
Yeah, not to derail the whole conversation here, but yeah.
It's in the documents.
That's what their whole application.
They're
Yeah.
saying
Do you have copies of
they'll
those documents
be
that you
marketing
could
fish
pass
eggs.
around?
Yeah,
they say.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Fish eggs will be produced here
Yes.
and shipped to producers who will be their clients. They won't produce any fish that go to market. They will sell their eggs to fish farmers. If you will.
Sure, yes. So, yeah, this is exactly the question, is who controls the production of the fish? But it's very clear in the U.S. documents that there's a facility, an inland facility in the mountain. They've described the security system, that there is one place that they've specifically said the fish would be grown out in. And maybe that's an independent industrial corporation that's growing them out. It's AquaBounty's responsibility, we would say. Certainly they're the ones asking for environmental assessment. But it looks like AquaBounty's manufacturing ideas of misinformation, because there's no dispute over how this plan is going to unfold. It's a technical detail, whether it's independent fish farmers or AquaBounty, unless you're looking at environmental assessment and saying, oh yes, if it's independent fish farmers, who's going to control that production? How do we research, how do we monitor and enforce a good system if there's a handful or even just one independent company in Panama, whether it be in the facility described in the U.S. documents by AquaBounty or another one? But they're very clear in their U.S. documents about the placement of the farm, the security system, where it's placed in relationship to rivers. So there's
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration last year at the hearings made clear that they were only approving this on the condition that the eggs be produced in Canada and that the fish themselves be produced in Panama. And they made that clear when the company tried to say, oh, but they wanted to grow other places in the U.S., and the FDA officials said, no, we're not approving it to be grown in the U.S. We're only approving it to be grown eggs in Canada, and the flesh to be exported from Panama. That's all. Now, under U.S. law, once the fish is approved, the company would be able to go back and ask for supplemental approval for other locations, which it's made clear that that's what it wants to do. But they're doing this Panama-Canada shuffle in order to avoid a full U.S. environmental review of the fish now.
Just because the fish wouldn't be on U.S. not soil, but property when they're being grown.
Right. And so then they don't have to deal with Atlantic salmon being an endangered species in the U.S. They can sidestep that whole conversation and speed the approval of this fish for people to eat it.
The company has been very clear that even last week in a newspaper article in Canada that they plan to raise these fish all around the U.S. and even all around the world. We know they're talking to Chile, they've spoken with Chile, they've spoken with China. Their intent is very clear. And as we mentioned, once the initial approval happens for the Canada-Panama setup, it'll be much easier for AquaBounty to get approval at those other facilities, since it'll only be approved. The approval process will be for a new facility, not as for the fish and its environmental impacts. So it seems to us that they're trying to skirt proper environmental review.
Just looking at sort of the broader issue here about GM fish, I know in some literature you guys put out that this would be the first approved GM fish, in the world or just North America?
It'll be the first genetically engineered animal approved for food in the world.
Right. And I know there have been a number of sort of crops that have been approved for sale. Is there such thing as a safe GM animal, do you think, theoretically? I mean, is there a way that you guys can be AquaBounty halfway on this? Or is any GM fish going to be a bad fish?
Yeah, well, I would say that, we know fish escapes happen. There are many scenarios for contamination. And if one happens, then that's the consequence that we're trying to avoid here. So the consequence is so severe that if there's a risk of contamination, that risk is unacceptable.
So at the end of the day, I guess you guys want all of AquaBounty just shut down permanently as far as this fish is concerned?
Yes.
Well, U.S. consumers don't want to eat it. The Canadian government hasn't asked if Canadians want to eat it. Do PEI residents, have they been asked if they want AquaBounty here?
So yes, essentially.
AquaBounty's conducting a dangerous experiment here on PEI. They should close shop and go back to the United States.